To an article about it just to see what they were saying. This was on ESPN a couple years ago. It says like it's a little secret that nobody knows about, and they're talking about sleep deprivation. The whole article is about sleep deprivation, but testosterone's mentioned a bunch.
What about sleep deprivation? I was reading something about that with sleep deprivation and jet lag. They were talking about one of a game that was played where the players flew in the day of and didn't have the best performance, and they were talking about...
In a WNBA game recently, the players were complaining...
Not WNBA.
Oh, it was regular
NBA,
NBA?
yeah.
I just know that happened in a WNBA game like last week. They were complaining about that. But it does happen in the NBA too.
It must be a factor. Like, you would never do that in a fight.
Oh, huge.
That's what they're talking about. It dropped these players down to like a 20-year-old down to a guy that was like should have been in his 50s.
Oh, so they did a test on their... testosterone. Okay. So Hoyer and his staff consider their efforts to counter sleep loss, like deep breathing exercise to optimize sleep, to be all but a Band-Aid for a broken bone. By the 2014-2015 season, Royer and his staff had fully committed to their investigation of sleep deprivation, tracking 18 players over multiple teams in each conference. When the season began, those players' testosterone levels ranked on average in the 88th percentile compared to males their own age. After 2 months of NBA play and travel, their levels had fallen to the 70th percentile. By March, the 32nd percentile, a 64% drop in just 5 months. So that's just being worn the fuck out.
Yeah. I mean, I get called a lot, do some work with military, do some work with any kind of high-performance teams that are dealing with this kind of thing. They want to know, how can we maintain hormone levels and performance? And you always start with get regular sleep as much as you can. It's everything. And how do you, one night, no big deal, but 2 nights, 3 nights, you're impaired. And a lot of these guys also are really disciplined, but some go out and party afterwards and that whole thing. Mm-hmm. So it's always maximize exposure to sunlight in the first half of the day. Number one thing for just making sure that you sleep well that night. And then limiting artificial light exposure by dimming lights from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Very few people do those two things, but they have an outsized effect on sleep. And there's a really nice study out of Israel this last year that showed that if you had people, this was men and women, go outside for 20 minutes 3 times a week and try and expose as much of their skin as they possibly could to sunlight while still being decent, all right, that it raised testosterone and estrogen significantly. Why? Because skin isn't just an organ to, tattoo and protect our organs. It's a organ that actually functions as an endocrine, as a hormone organ, like vitamin D, right? Mm-hmm. This kind of thing. And there was this whole pathway that they delineated in this study, really interesting, based on keratinocytes, which are these particular skin cells, and P53, which is a cell cycle molecule. Super interesting. It showed getting sunlight on your body, getting sunlight exposure to your eyes early in the day increases testosterone and estrogen, increases feelings of well-being, improves sleep, et cetera. It's like all the things we know.
Right.
But people are finally catching on to this. And even though I kind of blab about this ad nauseum on my podcast, people always say, well, can't I just crank up my phone really bright in the morning and sit there? There's always this kind of negotiating. Like you're not going to out-negotiate the sun. Right. I mean, and then people think, oh, the sun, that's really kind of woo technology. No, we evolved to get sunlight during the day and to avoid light at night.
Have they done studies on people that live in, like, say, the Pacific Northwest where they don't get a lot of sunlight and whether or not that affects their testosterone and estrogen?
Yeah, so they definitely... It depends on where they start out because there's some genetic variation. I mean, the variation in testosterone levels is huge, hence the huge reference range of like 300 nanograms per deciliter all the way up to, 1,200, right? Mm-hmm. This is what makes TRT kind of a tricky topic. But more seasonal depression for sure.